What's good, everybody? This episode of the podcast is sponsored by DistroKid. They are the go-to for digital music distribution and the easiest way for musicians to get their music onto Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, TikTok, YouTube, and more. They offer unlimited uploads, and artists keep 100% of their earnings, getting your music onto platforms and into stores 10 to 20 times faster than any other distributor. They help with cover song clearance, automatic splits, and they offer all kinds of tools and templates to help you get the most visibility for your releases. I dig this company and appreciate their business model that offers more features and tools than any other distributor while doing it at the most affordable price for solo artists, bands, DJs, studio artists, and any other creators that are making music or producing music in their home, and they offer label services as well. They've got 3 different tiers that they offer to creators that start as low as $22.99 a year. That's just $1.92 a month. And even their top tier is only $7.50 per month. And the best part about DistroKid sponsoring the podcast is they are offering Dan Cable Presents listeners 30% off their first year of service with DistroKid, making their affordable prices even cheaper for you. I will put that discount link in the episode notes. It will also be in my Instagram bio. Big shout out to DistroKid for sponsoring this podcast for more than 3 years now. Much appreciated. Now let's get into the episode.
Look down at the
What is happening, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Dan Cable Presents podcast. Thank you for tuning into the program once again. If this is your first time listening, thanks for checking out the show. You can find fresh episodes coming at you on Tuesdays. And if you want to help support this thing in a free way, you can do so by clicking subscribe on iTunes, clicking write a review, giving the podcast 5 stars if you feel like it is deserving of so, and that will help propel this thing into the tops of those iTunes charts and give it more visibility. Helping strangers find the podcast, just a great way to contribute to the growth and sustainability of this thing. Appreciate the hell out of all the folks that have already taken the time to do so. If you're not listening on Apple, just hit like, follow, subscribe wherever you are listening from. Tell a friend about the podcast, and if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and click subscribe there. Hope everybody is doing well out there, hanging tough. Another week in the books. It's wild times out there. I don't know. I don't know what to say about it, but at least this week on the podcast, we've got episode 439 with Matt Kessler, owner of Too Many Records here in Portland, Oregon, a record store up in North Portland, off Lombard. I've been frequenting the shop. I didn't even put the T in there. I've been frequenting the shop the last few months, and I've been finding some really great stuff in there. It's small enough where if you walk in for about 30 minutes to an hour, you could probably flip through everything in there. And I'm just always finding things in there that I would not expect, and then I have to go home with them because, you know, the whole record situation here. If you've been watching, there's a lot of records in this space, and just everybody at the record store, including Matt, the owner, is just very knowledgeable about different types of music in the store. So when I went in last week, they were doing this hip hop drop day, and I just got in this conversation with this dude Wags, who works there and has this incredible personal collection of records and has been a DJ that has spun music all over the world. And I was like, Wags, put me on to some electronic music. You know, I'm trying to widen the collection of electronic music, that genre specific within the collection. It's a little thin here, and I've been enjoying house music and electronic music so much the last couple of years. So I asked him to put me on some things, and he just like gave me a lot of great options. And I went home with a couple of them blindly, never listening to them, just purely off of his recs. I said, hey, I'm gonna get 2 of these today. Which ones do I have to get? and he just picked out a couple really incredible records that I would have probably never known about or listened to if it wasn't for picking his brain that day. But yeah, just really enjoying my time spent over at Too Many Records, and I really enjoyed this chat and hang with Matt. This is our first time getting to know each other than just me popping in the store every once in a while and having some conversations in there about records. And just really cool to learn how Matt, got to the point of having a brick-and-mortar record store here in Portland, which is one of the meccas of record stores, definitely in this country, maybe in the world. It's just like a spot where we have this incredible amount of record stores, and the quality of them is really great. I'm typically disappointed when I go to other cities to go check out record stores just because of the pickings that we have around here. But Matt started this record store based on a Too Many Records YouTube channel that he started, and he was just collecting records on his own and starting to talk about him and do deep dives, and then he started a record label, and you'll hear the whole thing. But I'm sorry, I'm struggling a little bit to talk. I'm struggling a little bit through this today, and but just a cool story, and I'll make sure to put all the links for Matt and Too Many Records in the episode notes, so you can check out the shop if you're here in Portland, Oregon, or if you're visiting Portland. You can go put this on your record stores to check out while you're here. And you can also tap in with Matt's YouTube channel, where he's doing these deep dives on different myths of records and just all sorts of things, vinyl related, sought after records, grails. He's doing it all over at that YouTube channel. So check those out. They're regularly released. And with all that, we are going to get into this thing. Also, if you're listening on release day, just a quick note, I have started a new monthly series called Sunday Coffee, doing these early shows over at Clay Street Studios. There's only 35 tickets available for each show. They're seated, and they are intimate live recordings. The first one is happening on March 3rd. And the link for the ticket is in my Instagram bio. I'm really stoked about it. It's an ensemble of musicians who have been some of my favorites in Portland for the last decade, and they have come together to create a new project called Ozcat. I'm probably not even pronouncing that correctly, but they've never even played a live show before, and so it's going to be really special. They've only gotten together and played music a couple times, but just incredible musicians. Just to mention a few: Alex Meltzer, Frank Irwin, and Brown Calvin of Brown Calculus are a part of the ensemble. So please come check that out. I think it's going to be really cool. It's a noon to 2 thing, coffee and tea provided. It's not going to be taking up too much of your day. It's really just to focus in on just one or two artists each time and kind of have a nice start to your Sunday. So first ever Sunday Coffee, March 2nd, going down. Ticket link is in the Instagram bio, or I don't know, message me or something. I'll make sure that you can find the ticket link. And this is it, episode 439 with Matt Kessler from Too Many Records here in Portland, Oregon. Now let's do the damn thing.
Kind of all around town.
All right. Cool.
Good dude.
Well, I've been enjoying going through the shop and seeing what's going on over at Too Many Records. And,
thank you. It's been a wild ride.
Yeah. I really know not a whole lot about how you started collecting records and then eventually opened up your own record store. So talk to me just about like the evolution of Too Many Records, of starting a YouTube channel and it eventually becoming this brick and mortar record store here in Portland, Oregon.
It's going to be a crazy story. No, not really. It's a pretty normal story. Yeah, I started collecting records in 2012, 13. The reason I credit it is, or I say it's because I was dating someone long distance, and I was like trying to find ways to like take my mind off the fact that long distance is awful.
Yeah.
So I've always been a music guy. I've always been into collecting, and I got my first record player, and like immediately fell in love with it. I had a crazy score. Because this was before vinyl was back like in vogue. It wasn't like the biggest thing on the world yet.
You said like 2012, 2013? Yeah. Okay, that's when I moved. I moved to Portland in 2013, and that's when I started, like, I bought a record player when I moved here immediately.
We were in sync. We were like, this is the thing to do.
I bought my first 4 records, and as you can see now after you've browsed through, I know I don't have nearly the amount of records you have, but I feel like I have a stupid amount of records.
No, it's a good thing to not have as many records as I am actively, we can get into this later, I am trying to pare my collection down. It's out of control.
I am too. I have a couple bins over there that one I would like to take to your shop, or I would like to see if you're like, don't bring these to me.
It's just all Herb Alpert. I'm like, we're good. All polka. Someone walked in the other day with only yodeling music.
Oh, wow.
I'm not even kidding. It was a bin of yodeling records. And she was the sweetest lady. And I was just like, with all due respect,
what am I supposed to do with this?
Nobody's going to purchase this. And I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
She was she understood. She was like, yeah, I know this is probably without value.
This is not a good investment for me.
Yeah.
But like what sparked like you wanting to buy vinyl?
I think it's because I didn't grow up with it, and I was always curious about it. Because I was like, okay, this was how people listen to music before, I guess, cassettes and then CDs and then MP3s, which, growing up in, the late 90s, 2000s, like I feel like MP3s, that's how I listened to most of my music.
Right.
I had like an archaic, like Arcos jukebox, like old school MP3 player.
Just like burn CDs that were the ones that you could put like 300 songs on.
Yeah. Like the mega CDs. And I was always like, how does it work? And then you get a thing in your hand that holds like 500 songs and you're like, what?
Yeah.
I was always curious about vinyl, and I didn't really know what it sounded like. I'd never really sat down and listened to a record. So what happened was I got an Audio-Technica LP60, which a lot of people get as their first table.
That was my first record player. I think there's one sitting in that box right there.
Yeah. And half of my job is explaining to people why that's not necessarily the best option. And it's because there's no counterweight on the back. There's no way to adjust the tone arm. Yeah. So it causes records to skip that shouldn't skip, and sometimes causes excess wear.
The reason that one's in a box and hasn't been like just gifted to like somebody trying to get into vinyl is that that particular one, when the record ends, instead of the arm lifting and going over, it just right across the record. And I didn't realize like what kind of damage I was doing to the record. Like
all your records just have a line across them.
So there was a period of time where I would hope that I realized that I was on the last song before that would happen. But there's definitely like a lot of those first 100 records in the collection have a unique little
special treat added to them. So that was my first turntable, and I was noticing records were skipping, and I was like doing research, and I was like, what is going on? Why is this happening? I learned that was the reason. So I went and tried to find a vintage table, and I got the most insane deal ever. It was on Craigslist. It was a dude who just like was getting rid of his old gear, and it was like a mid 70s Pioneer receiver and turntable, like basically perfect condition. He charged me $80 for the pair. Like now those would go for $500-$600 plus each.
Yeah,
like because we're very nice gear.
That's still, like you were saying, kind of in that period of time where vinyl hadn't really necessarily had its like crazy resurgence, where you were seeing now like records at Target and Best Buy.
No, at that point there were definitely no records at Target and or Whole Foods. There was a records at Whole Foods for a minute. I don't know if you remember that. It was like a weird year.
I don't remember that. I remember like Starbucks selling CDs.
Dude, Cracker Barrel has records now. And not only records, they have exclusives.
How do you feel about someone buying a record at Target?
Better than Cracker Barrel.
Cool. I bought a Peter Gabriel record at Target yesterday with no intention. I took a lap. I was doing some other shopping, and
which record?
And I always just like, I need to see if there's like a good sale, right? Of
course, yeah.
Because like sometimes you just get like a banging deal at like a Target.
I have nothing against. I just bought a record on Amazon yesterday. Like I own a record store, so obviously Amazon is a competitor for me in a way, even though I'm all used basically. But it's the only place I could find the record.
Yeah,
And I was
there
like,
is that.
what am I supposed to do? It's on Amazon. I'm going to get it.
But I recently listened to Peter Gabriel's "So" for the
Fantastic.
for the first time on an airplane like a few weeks ago. I had never really listened to that record front to back, and like I'm a huge Phil Collins fan and more of a fan of that era of Genesis. But I've always liked some Peter Gabriel songs. I've just like never really done a crazy deep dive on records, but I listened to that record on an airplane and I was like, this is amazing. And then I was walking around Target yesterday and I was like, I got the 180 grams. So just sitting here for $25 felt very reasonable for a new copy of it. And I was like, I guess I'm leaving Target with a record today.
And here's the flip side is that if we got a copy of So in the shop and it was like VG plus, like near mint cusp,
Yeah.
it would probably also be about $25.
Yeah.
And I bet you the original would sound better than the modern repress. Like,
Yeah.
so that's the only caveat I would say. It's not about buying a record at Target. It's the fact that a lot of these modern records, not all, a lot of them, they are not going to be as good sounding just because there's not as much care put into them, and a lot of them are digital rips.
Even if it is like the 180 gram.
Well, 180 gram, I on my channel at one point I called it the 180 gram scam because it doesn't really mean anything. It's kind of a buzzword because like
Okay.
it was supposed to be like, oh, the records are thicker so they won't warp as easily and they sound better because the
Yeah.
grooves are deeper. It's not true. I have a ton of 180 gram records that warp more than my thin ones.
Okay.
And I don't think they last longer in any reasonable test that a human could do to like test out. Like vinyl's
Yeah.
pretty durable. Like it's to wear a record out, you have to play it more than anyone's gonna ever play a record if
Yeah.
it's on good gear. So
Okay.
to me, 180 gram is kind of a buzzword.
Okay.
I own a lot of them obviously because they just exist, but I don't like it. Doesn't add value for me.
Okay.
You know,
And like side by side, not necessarily like getting a better sound.
I think that next time I get a copy of So In, which it comes in every now and again, you should bring your copy in and we should A/B them.
That'd be
and
fun.
see. 'Cause I'm curious.
I don't really
I could
like,
be wrong.
I've never really done that with any record, like that sort of test. And I would imagine that that's something that like having a record store, you have the opportunity to, or
It's kind of
with one
wild
your
sometimes.
35 copies of Jose Gonzalez's Veneer.
5 copies, and that's not enough. I think I need 10.
So prior to like 2012, 2013, Matt has no records.
0 records.
Okay. And no like dream of having a record. That wasn't like a boyhood dream that you were one day going to have a record store. Like, were you somebody that was always listening to like a pretty wide range of music growing up? Like that was a big interest to you?
Yeah, I think that in high school, my tastes were very. I think it was good, but it was weird. Like so in high school, what I listened to was the Killers were my favorite band.
Okay.
So a lot of the Killers. My friend group was very weird in the sense that we listened to a lot of doo-wop,
Okay.
which is not normal for a bunch of 15, 16-year-old boys to listen to in modern day. And we listened to a lot of arena rock, like Journey,
Yeah.
Styx, Def Leppard, Foreigner,
Boston.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that was kind of where my tastes oscillated, and maybe some of the indie stuff in that time, like Modest Mouse and Neutral Milk Hotel and things like that too.
Okay.
But it was really when I went to college and I met my roommate Dylan, who was still one of my best friends of all time. He introduced me to bands like Radiohead, and like he introduced me to Andrew Bird, and like he kind of cracked another layer musically for
Yeah.
me. And then I kind of just was off to the races with discovery because I really liked the idea of just like going down rabbit holes and finding labels that I liked or artists that I liked.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like one of the beautiful things about walking into a record store and just
Yeah, I agree.
buying a record just because the cover art
Yeah.
and the back art like grab you in some way where you're like, I need to know what this is about.
I don't have the luxury of space for that anymore. Like I remember when I used to be able to do that and like just take a chance on things.
Yeah.
I just don't have I don't know. It's like space is such a commodity in the collection now that I can't take risks anymore.
Yeah. So did it happen really quickly? Like once you bought that setup off Craigslist
Yeah.
from the dude, and then you're just like constantly buying records and trying to build some sort of collection?
I think I went from like 3 records to 100 records in a matter of like 2 weeks. Like
Yeah.
I lived in LA, so I was 10 minutes door to door to Amoeba Hollywood.
The old one.
The old one, the best
Yeah.
one.
Dude,
And
yeah, that place is. I mean, I grew up like 45 minutes outside of LA and like spent a fair amount of time at that old Amoeba location, especially like during a period of time. Some friends and I were making a record in Echo Park, and we would, like, when there would be downtime and there was no reason for us to be in the room, we would go to Amoeba, and yeah, that place was just mind blowing to me.
do you remember Origami Vinyl in Echo Park?
No.
It was either Silver Lake or Echo Park. I forget. It was a great little record store, and they closed down, but I figured you might know them.
I didn't really like go to any like local places like that. Like we would just go to Amoeba because like we didn't live very close to it. So like any opportunity we would go browse there. But that was like long before I knew I would ever have a record collection.
Sure.
You
Yeah,
know,
you were
we
just
would
like,
go
music's
there,
cool.
Like we would go there just to like go look at DVDs.
Sure.
Because there's like such
Endless.
a crazy collection of those.
The amount of scores that I found over like I lived in LA for 7 years. The amount of, and it was all pre-new location. It was all
Okay.
the classic Amoeba Hollywood. And
Yeah.
like the amount of scores I had there over the years is just astronomical. And I also think back to the moments of like digging and passing up records that now are worth hundreds of dollars, and they were just in the bin in front of me for like $12.
Yeah.
And it's just like, if I could just go back, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why even now, if I know something is only like 500, like getting a pressing of 500, even if it's like a smaller band, I'll just always buy two.
Yeah. You never know.
Because I feel like at the very least, that second copy is going to pay for mine. Like,
Right. Over time.
Like I'm going to be able to sell it for double.
Yeah.
Probably.
I mean, over the years, because you know, obviously my collecting went like into overdrive from 2013 to now. But a lot of how I fueled my collection was I was pretty meticulous keeping everything on Discogs, and I would periodically go and look and see when things jumped up in price.
Yeah.
And I would then evaluate and be like, okay, I bought this record for $20. It's worth $120 now. Do I like this record enough to keep it, or do I want to sell this and buy 4 records I'm really into right now?
That's kind of how I mostly like evaluate things at this point. You know, it's like, because I think when I was first buying records, I was really only buying things and still do like that I'm going to listen to front to back. Like I'm not trying to buy a record that I like 5 songs off of. Like it doesn't make much sense to me.
I try to do the same. I that's always been a rule that I've talked to on my YouTube channel, is that like I really think that part of why vinyl's so great is that it forces you to listen to the full record, basically. I mean, you can skip around, but like just put the record on, right? Like that's like the gist. And if I just like 1 or 2 tracks or 3 tracks, like just listen digitally. Like you don't need the record.
Yeah.
And I've really tried to hold true to that for myself. And let me tell anyone who's watching this, I just dug through the records. It is a extremely well curated collection. And I'm not just saying that to be nice. Like truly, all these records are records that are worth listening to front to back.
I appreciate it. I've done my best. I do feel like my taste has certainly like evolved over time, and I've had many people come into my life similar to like your college roommate that have like blown things open for me, or like I've had my cousin to like really put me on to jazz and giving me the patience to like listen to jazz differently, and now I have like what I would consider to be like a cool jazz collection, and you know, there's a little bit of everything here, and it's also just like made me appreciate just like listening to a side of a record. Like I'm not always like putting a record on and listening to it front to back. I think a lot of the times it does happen like that, but sometimes I'm just like, I'm just going to throw this on, listen to the first side.
Yeah.
You know?
Then you come back later in the day and you finish it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the experience kind of, you take it and it modulates with your time, right?
Yeah. What do you feel like you became obsessed with?
When do I feel?
Like what exactly do you feel like made you jump from having 3 records to 100 in a month?
That's a really good question. I guess like, I don't think I have an addictive personality per se.
Yeah.
But I do think that I am someone who revels in nostalgia.
Okay.
And I'm also somebody who's really good at convincing myself to do things that maybe aren't the smartest decision financially, maybe.
Yeah.
So I immediately was like, okay, this is fun. I like listening to records. I need to now get all of my favorite albums as soon as humanly possible.
Yeah.
So between Amoeba and then another big thing that was a catalyst for me getting records was I discovered Reckless Records in Chicago.
Okay.
They have an online site where you can buy used records from their stores. So they
Cool.
have 3 huge stores in Chicago. I've never been. It's actually been a bucket list thing for me to go check them out. But, dude, the amount of like used records, I would every day just go in and like see what they added to like the used new arrivals online, and
Yeah.
I would get like 8 records and have them shipped to me, and like it got out of control. It was like very fun. the dopamine of like finding the record even virtually through that method was crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know. I guess I'm assuming we are around the same age. Are you okay with this? Do you disclose your age on things? You don't have to.
Yeah, I'll be 36 in April.
Okay, so I'm like 4 years older than you. So, and I know that, like you, we share an interest in like emo,
Big time.
pop punk,
Yeah.
like things of that nature. And those were like things during their era. Like vinyl was like nobody gave a shit.
Yeah.
So like I feel like we also started collecting around a time where those things started to get pressed for the first time, or like finally getting represses since the first time, which was rad.
For sure, because those early pressings were so valuable and hard to find because of that. And then like you had Hot Topic pressing exclusives of all of these albums that now in like 2025 are extremely rare. Like those Hot Topic versions of those emo records are like very hard to find.
Yeah, or even the punk stuff. Like I have the Bad Religion Pink vinyl that Hot
Yeah.
Topic did.
Yeah.
Of No Control. And like I know
Their
that
best
one
record,
is
yeah.
like. Sometimes I'm like, do I need a pink version of this? Because
Yeah.
I'd be perfectly happy with a black copy, and I could sell this one for $100.
They just did a crazy pressing of that record that's like this clear with like this wild rainbow splatter that's like unlike any other kind of like splatter I've seen. It's like
Yeah.
a very unique kind of splatter. And it was like a European import. Like you couldn't, like I had to pay overseas shipping to get it. And it was so cool. It was like, I justified it. I was like, this is awesome. I
Yeah.
didn't own the record. So
Do you really love the variations of like pressings
I do.
like that?
I do. And I think there's a lot of misinformation in this industry where I did a video on YouTube that did fairly well where I was talking about black versus colored vinyl.
Yeah.
And I think back in the day, like back even back when you and I started collecting. Well, first of all, for sure back in like the 80s, but like even like 2012, 2013, colored records often didn't sound as good as black records.
Right. That was a thing.
That was a thing.
Okay.
It's no longer a thing. Like nowadays the technology and the plants have gotten so buttoned up for the most part that if a record is coming out and it, you know, it's the same stamper, it's just pressed with different colored pellets, right? So it's like the mastering's the same, the lacquer cutting's the same, and if you're going to press a black copy and a splatter copy from the same run,
Yeah.
they're going to sound to 99% of setups indistinguishable. So a lot of people hold on to this like old adage of like black sounds better, and it doesn't. It's just not true. Like sometimes it's true, but it's like every square is a rectangle, not
Yeah.
every rectangle square. Is that right? Did I say that right?
Sure.
Something like that. It's not always true, but it is sometimes true. So for me, part of why I love vinyl is the art, right? You get like the big jacket. Sometimes you get to the gatefold with more
Yeah.
info. You get a poster sometimes. Although who really wants a folded up poster? I mean, that's like a pet peeve of mine. Like conceptually, it's cool. But then you get the album that can be colored in a beautiful way to match the cover art. And for me, that's an extension of the artistic vision, right? Like on my record label, every one of my records, my signature style is I do a 2-color splatter on some base color,
Okay.
and I try to make it match the cover art as perfectly as possible because I want it to look beautiful next to it. Like if you have the now spinning and you have your record, or you have like your like, you know, jacket up on the wall and
Yeah.
the record spinning, I want it to complement it. I think it's like the aesthetic is part of the journey. It's not just the audio to me.
Yeah. So when did you start making videos about vinyl?
So it was like 2015.
And that is like where Too Many Records started?
Well,
Like
it actually
the-
started as something else.
Okay.
So in 2015, I was in a relationship with someone. Her name was Sandy, and we're actually still very good friends. This
Shout
day,
out
which is
Sandy.
great. Shout out Sandy. She's brilliant. She's an actress. really good actress. She was on a show called Queen of the South, and she was like one of one of the main characters. She books all kind of stuff. She's wildly talented. She does music now. She's awesome. We're still very good friends. But we were in a relationship, and she was like, "You're encyclopedic about music. You should share this with people. You should start a channel talking about your record collection." And she was like, "We should do a channel where I like am kind of like a little ditzy and I don't really know a ton about music, and we'll call it Damn It Sandy. And like you'll just kind of just be like teaching me about these artists, and I'll kind of be goofy and fun."
Yeah.
I was like, that's a really cool dynamic. Let's do it. Because she was an actress. I was an actor at the time. So that's something not everyone knows
Is that why you were in LA?
So I was in LA. I acted through high school, through college.
Okay.
I lived in New York and I was acting. I moved to LA to continue that. LA is a very different beast for actors, and it just wasn't. I didn't love the aspect of constant networking. It felt very fake. It didn't feel like I was actually getting to do the acting, which is the part I loved. So doing the YouTube channel with her was kind of like getting to act a little bit.
Yeah,
for both
doing
of us.
something creative. You get to be on camera.
We had
kind of turn it
control of
on.
Yeah, exactly. So we did Damn It Sandy for like, I don't know. The videos would probably span like 8 or 9 months.
Okay.
Majority of our relationship, and it started to get a bit of a following. Like at that time, there weren't a ton of vinyl channels. There were like of note, maybe 3.
Okay.
Now there's dozens and dozens and dozens of them, but like we started to build like a following, and I was like, wow, maybe this is something that could turn into something. People seem to like hearing people talk about records, do recommendations, or whatever it may be, reviewing artists, reviewing albums. And then unfortunately our relationship ended. And she got really busy with acting stuff, and it was just between the mix of all of that, it was just hard to continue doing videos together.
Yeah.
So I was like, I want to keep doing this. So I sat with some friends, and we ideated a new name for the channel, and we just came up with Too Many Records, because at that point I definitely had, well over 2,000 records. So it's like I had too many records.
Damn.
And yeah, it just became me, and then I would occasionally have guests. Sandy came back for various episodes over the years, but like,
okay.
Yeah, it was like mostly just me talking about my records.
And were you always kind of like also diving into things like you were just talking about the myth of, the black records versus the colored, or like, I know that's like kind of a part of the channel now where you will like talk about like misconceptions about vinyl, like where you were just like absorbing all of this information and like doing kind of research on your.
It was stuff I found interesting and I was passionate about.
Yeah.
And like, an episode could be anything from, like, I used to do a segment that I stopped doing called A-Side, B-Side, where at the start of the month I would share albums coming out that I was looking forward to listening to, and the records that I thought I'd be getting in, because I was like keeping track of my pre-orders, and then the B-side would be my reviews of those albums and showing off the records when they came in. And the people that loved that segment loved it, but it was just so niche compared to other videos that it was hard to keep up with it. Like the views weren't great. I don't know. There's been a lot of experimenting over the years with YouTube, and I think what I can safely say now is I have no idea what YouTube wants from my channel anymore.
I don't think anybody knows exactly. Like
I've had a pretty difficult relationship with YouTube over the years, because there was a long time where I was working a job. For the first few years I was working in a restaurant, and then I was working as a marketing company, and I was working at a different marketing company after that, and always wanting YouTube to pop off, right? Always wanting that to be my thing. And I would just get so depressed watching a video that it was just like a throwaway video get like huge views, and then a video I poured my heart and soul into get like nothing.
Yeah, man.
It was like it broke my brain.
Yeah.
And it made me have a very like combative relationship with myself and with YouTube, and it was not healthy for my mental health.
Yeah.
Eventually, after like 4 or 5 years of it, I was like, I don't know if I could keep this up. Like it's I feel like a crazy person.
Yeah. So were you, I don't know, let's say around the time you've accumulated 2,000 records.
Yeah.
Is there a thought in your head at that point, like, I'm going to have a record store at some point?
No.
Like, you wouldn't have that feeling when you walked into, you're obviously like buying these records at, I'm assuming a split between online and walking into record stores like Amoeba. Like when you would walk into an Amoeba or like some mom and pop shop, would you be firing in your brain at all? Like, oh, if I had a record store, it would be really cool to have a record store.
I mean, at one point I did make a video that was like things that I hate record stores, things that I hate that record stores do. And then I also think I did one that was things I love that like good things that record stores do.
I think I saw something when I was browsing through the channel earlier, just kind of getting ready to talk with you, and I think I saw one on there where you're like, just have a thing of things you love about, or like what makes a great record store.
Yeah, I think making those videos, like after having gone to record stores, like almost as like a full-time job in a way, just like for so long. And the fact that I made the video and all the comments were just like, yes, this is exactly right. I agree with all this. I was like, in my head, I was like, I would be a good record store. I was like, I know what people want. I know what I want. And I think that I would do a good job, but I never thought I was going to do it. I still always thought that YouTube was going to be the thing. And, the ultimate goal, and I did videos with Sandy, and then I did videos with other co-hosts that I had over the years for brief moments. I always wanted to. So the big goal of the YouTube channel was to be the Anthony Bourdain of music. Yeah, so I'm a huge Bourdain fan.
And then Anthony Fantano came and fucked your life up.
No, because here's the thing, Fantano is in his own lane. Fun fact about Anthony Fantano, actually, he commented on a Damn It Sandy video once upon a time. It was an Of Montreal review of one of their records, and he commented, "Oh, you guys are adorable." And it felt very condescending, but I was like, he knows who we are.
Once a month I get, are you Anthony? You know, you look a lot like Anthony Fantano, and I like had no aspirations of looking like Anthony Fantano. I wasn't like
the
trying
glasses,
to,
maybe?
Yeah, I wasn't trying to like get anything close to him. And
he couldn't grow a majestic beard like that.
I guess not. I don't know that he could. I was just in Mexico, and and this dude came up to me and he was just like, "Anthony Fantano?" And I was just like, "Nah." And I think at first he was like,
you should have been like,
doing a double take, and then I think he did realize it wasn't me, but he was like walking out of the restaurant, and we were staying in Sayulita, Mexico. It's like a pretty small town.
Yeah.
But as he was walking out, he was just like, "Hey, ease up on those reviews, Anthony." Like, and then I saw him like 3 more times during my like 6 days there.
Yeah.
And he would just like give me the nod. Like he knew it wasn't me, but it was like we were just having this ongoing.
That's very funny
bit. And I was like most likely wearing like music shirts every day. So, you know, I have no shade to Fantano.
No,
like I think it's rad that he's been able to build up a following doing what he does, and he truly does seem to be like the internet's biggest music nerd. Like I don't think anybody can like really take that away from him. It's not like my style that I necessarily
I don't go
enjoy
to him
personally
for my reviews. Like I don't like take stock in what he says, and it's nothing against his opinion. I like to make my own reviews of music. I don't usually read reviews that often. But the fact that he's went from nothing to the world's biggest music critic on YouTube is amazing. It shows the power of YouTube, which is very cool.
Yeah.
But I also I've thought about this so many times over the years because I feel this way on a small scale. There's no way he loves music anymore. Like he's so entrenched in having to make all of this content endlessly.
Yeah.
How can you love it when it's just
that's a super true point of anything. I'm not going to tell you I don't love doing this podcast because I do, but there is a shift that happens when it becomes a part of like my job or income.
Sure.
You know, where it's like, I mean, I love getting to do this. I love like getting to have someone like you come in here, and the only times I've met you is in the shop, and we've had like a couple brief chats in there, and it's like really cool to have this like one-on-one time with you to like get to know you and plug your record store. But there is, you know, a certain burden that comes with that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you know that from you have like the dream. You opened up a record store, and I'm sure like sometimes you're like, do I love records today?
I mean, that's something we could dive into that at any point. It's my relationship with records have changed substantially since I opened the store. But I think I'll always love music. I just feel like my relationship with music has been forever changed because it's part of my livelihood.
Yeah.
So like you're saying, I think like that's why I'm saying for Fantano, I'm like, there's no way he works so much harder than either of us do in terms of music.
Yeah.
And like, he can't not be burnt out. He's a human being. Like,
For sure.
I'd love for someone to really dive into that with him. And I wonder if he'd even answer it honestly, but
Yeah. Cause like, I think he can still do his thing and maybe have like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe the passion
yeah.
escapes him at
Yeah.
times, but I don't know. He's big enough. He probably has like a whole team that
That's
does
true.
the thing.
And I think that's my burnout too, is that for a little while during Too Many Records at the start of it, my friend Chris was helping me film and edit and do
Yeah.
graphics and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And eventually like we weren't making enough money to pay him his rate like
Yeah.
that he deserves.
Right.
So he had to like back out. So since then it's just been me. And I'm a competent editor. I can't do graphics. Like to be able to ideate film and host these videos, edit them, promote them, in addition to everything else I was doing in like life that would actually make me like livable wages. It was just like, it was too much. And I think it's, I forget that a lot of these YouTubers have whole teams of people working with them.
Dude, I was
And,
I was watching a podcast that has a significant amount of followers the other day, and they were talking about how there's 10 people that work on their podcast.
Yeah.
And I had to like take a step back, and I was like, wow, I'm doing a lot by myself.
Yeah. And we should be proud. I mean, we should be
No,
proud.
it's rad.
It's easy to get lost in the sauce, but like, the only time I got to really like collaborate. So what I was saying about the Anthony Bourdain thing is that, I love how he connects cultures with food.
Yeah.
I think it's emotional, it's interesting, it's connective in such like a baseline way. I want to do that with music, and specifically through the lens of vinyl, because I thought that didn't exist yet really. And there's seemingly fervency for it because everybody loves music and vinyl's back in such a big way. So, like 2 years ago, are you familiar with Whatnot?
No.
It's like an online platform where you can. It's like basically eBay meets Discogs, or like you basically do a live stream where you're selling items in real time and people are bidding in real time.
Okay.
So I was doing that for a while to supplement the store with like, things that were maybe not selling that were really cool, but like maybe Portland didn't want, but someone in Pennsylvania might really want it.
Yeah.
So I was doing that for a while, and I was trying to collaborate with them in a bigger way because I always have these bigger visions when I work with companies, more than just like, give me money and I'll promote you. It's like, why don't we build something cool and actually make content? Because that's kind of what I specialize in.
Right.
And I pitched them on this idea of a series called No Skips, where it was going to be a travel show that was going to be going to different cities and going to a big record store, going to a small record store, and then like interviewing like a major collector there in that city.
Yeah.
And kind of connecting like what makes that city tick musically and like what that city's about, and like, kind of like seeing like the musical heartbeat of that
For sure.
city. And I was like, this is a great idea. And they said, this is a great idea. And they ended up paying like a good amount of money to shoot a pilot. Like they flew one of their guys out. Like we hired a cinematographer. He did we did Portland just to save money as like the first episode.
It's sick, dude. I watched it today.
Oh, you saw it?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
Thank you.
That I've been wanting, like personally, I've been wanting to do something like on that level.
Yeah.
And watching it, I was, this is exactly like the type of thing.
And what's frustrating is that I said to them a dozen times leading up to it, I was like, okay, it's not going to pop off at the first. I was like, you have to invest in this idea.
Yeah.
And in this idea is, as we travel, we're going to show other people, like other store owners, about Whatnot, and like it's going to benefit your business.
Yeah.
Like, and they were like, great, we get it. And then the first video came out, and like all the comments are amazing. They're like, this is the highest quality thing I've seen in the vinyl community, and like everyone loved it. But YouTube did the thing where they take one of my great videos and they just kick me right in the dick. And and the views were terrible. Like comparatively to a video of me just sitting at my computer or at my camera just talking, which is like so low profile, it got like half those views, if not less. And they looked at specifically the views, and they were just like, I don't think we can keep investing in this. And they just pulled the plug on it. And I was like,
You got to give it more than one.
You got to give it more than one. And people were loving it. It just takes time. So I have this proof of concept now that lives on my YouTube channel. And I'm like, I'm just hoping somebody sees the value in this, and I think I'm the guy to host it. I do. You know, I think I'm pretty decent on camera. I have an acting background, so it's like I feel like I could do this and be engaging, but I also know and love
Yeah, you have
music.
a lot of knowledge, and now you have the experience of being a record shop owner yourself.
Exactly.
Which I think maybe gives you this additional layer of vocabulary even for asking certain questions. And so
Yeah.
I loved it.
Well, thank you.
I think it's great. I'll put the link in the episode notes for people to like
Awesome.
check it out and just your whole channel. But I thought that was like, I mean, I enjoy your videos of like you talking about, you know, these misconceptions and things like that. But that video in particular that's
like what I've wanted to do the whole time.
It's the type of shit I like. It's like why I love Action Bronson's Fuck That's Delicious. You know, that's like an iconic show to me, and it's like what I like. I don't know. It was the model for like the Tuna Boy series that I'm doing now, and yeah, it definitely has like those vibes, or like the Bourdain thing where you're like getting a piece of the city's culture.
Yeah,
you know,
it's like a slice of life, but it's through the lens of something that I'm really passionate about, and like most people are music.
Yeah,
you know?
or just like going. It's like, was that a friend of yours that like, you went and checked out their personal collection?
So that's DJ Wags. He's a
Okay.
DJ in town. He's DJ'd all around the world. He's great, and he's also he works part time at the shop.
Okay, I
Yeah.
thought he looked familiar from just seeing different things, but. Yeah, like that is such a cool element of that particular episode of just, it's like, yeah, I have 20,000 records. It's like, what the fuck?
It's his knowledge is I think I'm fairly encyclopedic, but I mean he has 20 years on me, but he knows everything. Like I'll pull a record at the shop, he'll be like, oh yeah, and I'll just like spit like 3 facts about it, no matter what it is. I'm like, how do you know so much? It's amazing.
That shit. I don't know the people's names that work at 2nd Avenue here in Portland, and that's like one of my favorite shops. But the thing that's mind blowing to me is that system is not ran by computer at all, and everything is still written on paper.
Yeah.
But you can ask that dude in there and be like, "Yeah, do you have this record?" He's like, he will just know.
Yeah.
There's no question.
There's something to be said about true analog, right? They're embracing the analog lifestyle in such a great way.
Insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, so when does it happen or like evolve to a point where you're like, I have enough records in my personal collection that I am going to open up a brick and mortar record store?
Well, I had been buying and selling on Discogs for a long time, obviously, like to fund my own collection. So I knew how to grade records. I knew how to ship records. And I was moving back from LA. I was done with LA. I don't have a ton of love for LA personally. Sorry if anyone's from LA watching this, but it's not my favorite place to live.
Yeah.
For many reasons. I won't like wax poetic about it, but like I didn't love it. I miss New York. That's like, I feel like the East Coast is like where my heart lies.
That's where you're from?
So I grew up in Northern California until I was 12, but then I lived in New Jersey for high school and 8th grade. I went to college upstate
So your
New York.
formative years.
Yeah. And then
East Coast.
And then I lived in the city, and I lived in the city again. Like I moved back there in 2019. And I did something called TMR Fest, where I rented out the top floor of this really dope bar that I just heard is gone now, which is a huge bummer. It was called the Federal, one of my favorite bars in North Hollywood. And I rented out the top floor, and we had we did a lot. I did a little podcast outside of the YouTube channel at one point. There's like 36 episodes or something on Spotify. I miss doing the podcast, so I'm envious you get to do it, because I love the podcast arguably more than doing the YouTube videos. It's so much fun to just get in deep conversation with people.
Yeah.
But we did a live podcast. We had 3 musical guests, including Fort Vine, who you've interviewed.
Yeah, that's a fun little...
little connective.
Yeah.
Super cool. Shout out to Fort Vine. And do you know who the album Leaf is?
Yeah.
He's
also done the podcast.
No way.
Yeah.
Jimmy?
Jimmy has done
Get
the
outta
podcast.
here.
That was great. Yeah, he did it a few years ago. We did it like over Zoom. And
I love Jimmy.
Jimmy was rad. Like, Jimmy is someone I would love to have on the podcast again, because it was like one of those things where I had so many like notes written down of different things we could talk about.
Yeah.
and I feel like each one became like a 10-minute chunk.
Yeah.
And so there's like so much shit I had to like either keep short or like we didn't get into. But like
I can relate to this on a visceral level because I'll give you a little backstory. My friends that my friend group, there was a guy in the friend group. His name was Aaron Moorhead, and he was one of my good friends. And then he was a filmmaker, and he got extremely successful. He did a few like indies that were really good feature films, and he was good friends. Him and his writing partner Justin Benson, who was also a buddy of mine. I was definitely much closer with Aaron, but Jimmy did the score for like a bunch of their films.
Yeah.
So Aaron, before he like really blew up, I convinced him and Justin and Jimmy to come sit down at my place in LA. And there's like, if you dig deep enough on the YouTube channel, there's like this 3-part episode of us just talking about music and film, but also just like music inspiration. And Jimmy and I just go on this like crazy tangent about electronic music that like we're just like, that's the first time we ever met. I loved his music for a long time. And we just kind of hit it off as like friends, like outside of that. And
he was such a cool dude.
He's so cool. And then he agreed to play TMR Fest as like the headliner for free. He would just like came and did it, which was insanely nice of him. Like,
that's awesome.
Like extremely generous to donate his time to do that. To send me off. But Aaron and Justin went on to do huge things. They're directing the new Daredevil series coming out. Like they're like massive now. So shout out to them. They're wonderful. But
cool.
TMR Fest was great. But what I also did outside of the performances was I had a pop-up shop, and I sold about 1,000 of my records from my personal collection at the shop. And I would say over the course of the day, like probably 300 people came in and out of that place to like watch music or buy records. And I kind of got a taste of like what it's like to run a record shop a little bit.
Yeah.
Moved to New York, and then pandemic happened, and I felt very trapped in my New York apartment with all the records and the chaos outside.
I can't believe you moved a record collection across the country like that.
And back.
It's psychotic.
It's psychotic. And I have videos documenting my stress and all the process, and yeah, not a good time to move them. If I'm ever going to move again, I'm going to sell most of my collection. I can't do it again. It's just, it doesn't matter if you're moving a block or if you're moving across the country.
Oh, dude,
moving records is the worst.
I did so many trips from where I was living to this space.
Yeah.
To bring all my records here.
Yeah.
Like,
it's awful. It's just awful. But yeah, I moved to Portland kind of on a whim because I was like, I'm going to leave New York. I was like, it's too congested with the pandemic. So in December 2020, I moved here.
Did you know that we had such a rich record store culture here?
I had an idea, but I didn't know quite how crazy it was till I got here. And I was like, wow, there's like 20 something record stores here. Like it's kind of crazy when you look at, like if you go on like Google and you search record stores, it's like, there's more stores than most people even realize.
I feel very spoiled.
Yes, we have the most per capita, but also some of the best. Like I lived in New York, I lived in LA. Like these are major music capitals of the states, and like Portland stores blow them out of the water.
Similar to food culture, I'm usually pretty disappointed when I go elsewhere. Like when I'm just in a city on tour or something, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go see what the record store is like.
Yeah.
Not always, it's not always a miss, but it makes me even more appreciative where I am just blown away that we have so many good shops here.
Yeah, I was just in Atlanta, which is another music city. Love the food there, love the city itself. I went to like 6 or 7 stores, and like there were maybe 2 that were good. The rest were just like, I was like very shocked. I was like, so many cities don't have, like you said, like we're spoiled, like don't have amazing record stores to like really call community and make home. And that's part of the reason why I was excited to start a store, because I wanted to entrench myself in this new community that I moved to.
Yeah.
And through the best way I knew how, which was through music and through, connecting in that way. So I moved here with the idea of opening a record store, and I took, a long time to try to find a space, and I finally found it and opened it up.
What was like your model in your head for what this record store would be? Or like, did you have any, I mean, I don't want to say, I don't know, I guess principles, or like what you envisioned for the thing. And then also like, how have had some of those things had to shift to make it into something sustainable?
For sure. I feel extremely lucky because I do think that I got to do a lot of research, whether it was real, like whether I realized it or not, over the years just doing the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Kind of figuring out a lot of the question marks. If like someone just wanted to open a record store, like they probably wouldn't have had like the amount of on the ground like years that I had to like really suss out what makes a good store and see what works and what doesn't. So I feel like I really laid the groundwork well for myself without even like intentionally doing so. I wanted a space. I knew first and foremost I needed a spot that I could have live performances because some of my favorite shows over the years have been in-store performances. Like I remember at that store I was telling you about, Origami Vinyl in Echo Park, I saw Courtney Barnett play there before she was like anybody in the States. And there were like 13 people in the store. And I was like, she's amazing. And then she became Courtney Barnett. So like, I think having those moments where you can like have these intimate shows, whether they're an artist with no following who gets an opportunity to now perform their music, like that might be hard to find, or it's an artist that's like on their way up and you get to catch them before they're like too big to ever play a record store. There's something special about providing that space and building that community. So I knew I needed a space that I could justify doing that. And I knew I wanted to be entirely used because a lot of people who buy records don't realize how bad the margins are on new records. It's like laughable. And I remember like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, like all the majors raised the prices across the board on new records also for wholesale.
Yeah.
It's horrible. Like if I'm buying like Kendrick Lamar, Good Kid, Mad City, and I'm buying it for like, if I'm going to put it on the shop for like $32, right? I'm paying like $22-23 for that record.
Yeah.
Like you have to put out so much money to be able to stock your store with new records. I can't fathom how any store could thrive if they're only selling new stuff, because you're competing with not just Amazon, which is like obviously a juggernaut that no one can compete with. You're competing with like Music Millennium, which has been here forever, and they have 1 million people on staff.
Yeah.
And they're ordering in bulk every record that comes out. You know, like you can't compete.
They're like getting a better deal.
Not
in
even
some
that.
cases.
Like sometimes I'm sure they have good deals with their distributors, but like it's more so the fact that like your average person is going to probably go to Music Millennium before your store if they're looking for a new release, if you're in town. So my whole unique value proposition was going to be like, okay, I need to make sure that I have a good pipeline and getting really cool used stuff as frequently as possible to keep people coming, you know, utilize whatever social media goodwill I've built over the years and keep people interested. You just have to constantly be showing them cool stuff to keep the fact that you exist top of mind, but also that you should exist because there's good stuff.
Yeah. I mean, seeing you're usually really great about like posting like every day in the stories of like what's like in the shop right now. And there's almost always something in there. I have to like hold myself back to not be like, Matt, will you hold that for me? There's almost always something just in those like 20 records that you show quickly where I'm like, damn, I'd like to have that.
Because that's a lot of people also think that's all we put out every day. We also shuffle stuff into the bins all day. Like, so like the goal for me was to have a store that was spacious enough that you can not feel suffocated. You could walk around, you can enjoy the atmosphere, but you could go one day of the week, dig for an hour, see everything, come back 2 or 3 weeks later, and it's like a bunch of new stuff.
Yeah.
Like more things that you like. It's just like something where it's like there's so many stores that I've been to over the years where I go over the span of a year, and it's like every time you go, it's like the same records.
Right.
Maybe like they add like 50 records, like every couple months, and you're like, it just feels so stale.
Was everything that you started with your personal collection?
No. So I obviously culled quite a bit from my personal collection, but I got very aggressive trying to buy collections. I got super guerrilla marketing. I was on like Nextdoor, like posting like, I'm opening a record store. Like, is there anyone selling their record collection? And like, people were receptive. I bought some great collections from doing stuff like that from really cool people.
And are you hoping a little bit that they don't know what they have? Or are you just like, usually you're capitalizing because you're buying in like such a high quantity that they're going to give you a good
I mean, that part is by default how any store succeeds, right? The margins are going to be better on used because when you're usually buying them in bulk. So people are like, I am going to give up the max profit for this to be able to not have to deal with cleaning, pricing, and individually selling these 300 records. Like, I'm willing to lose that profit so that that's on you now.
Right.
But I will say I do believe very strongly in record karma. Like, I do think that, and maybe this, I'm not the most like spiritual woo-woo person at all, but I truly believe that if you don't rip people off, tangibly, they're going to tell people that they had a good experience at the store, and they might tell their friends who are looking to sell their stuff. But also just cosmically, more good stuff will kind of come your way. We try to pay, from what I know, from hearing how other stores pay, from regulars or whatever it may be. I think we pay some of the higher amounts in town for used records because there's so many stores people can bring their stuff to. We want to get a reputation that we treat people fairly.
Yeah.
And a lot of stores do like price piles where they'll just like take a bunch of records and be like, all right, these ones are all like $1 and we could pay like $5 for all these. But like in the $5 pile, there might be a record worth 20, might be a record worth 50. And like, it's kind of just like, they're just like using like their brain to like eyeball it or brain ball it. It's not a thing. And we actually take the time to go through every record and price them the way we would price them in the store and then make a percentage offer based off of that. And I think that's a unique thing that we do that not every store does.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think my first comment to you in the store, like from going through the records, I was like, oh, these are all like really fairly priced, it feels like.
Yeah. And what's fair to somebody is not fair to someone else, right? So, every store, I mean, I remember when we first opened, I would like be on Reddit and I would see like on like the Portland subreddit or something, someone talking about like, oh, what record stores should I go to? And I remember seeing a couple threads where someone would be like, don't go to too many records, like way too expensive. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm pricing still ideally better than you can get online.
Yeah.
But I also have all the overhead that online person doesn't have. And I'm paying up for that record at a higher rate than other stores. So I have to charge this amount, right? So it's like so many people don't know how the process works and they like to make an assumption. And I think the issue is that too many records is expensive. It's the fact that records are expensive.
Yeah.
Just in general, it's an expensive hobby.
Well, also like I think that can be like someone being maybe naive to like what a certain pressing of this record is too, and like not really like understanding why this particular version of this record is like $50 at your store opposed to maybe like the $35 new one that they saw of that same record. Or
dude, it's so funny. There was a guy in the store the other day, and first time in the store, and he was on an earpiece talking to somebody the whole time, like digging through stuff and asking, oh, do we have this? Do we want this? Whatever. And he was in our Holy Grail bin, and he pulled out Led Zeppelin 2. And it was a picture disc from 2004. It was like from, I think, Spain or Italy or something. So it was just the picture disc of the cover in a plain sleeve.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, they got Led Zeppelin 2, not even a jacket. They want $60 for it. And I'm like, how do you know it's Led Zeppelin 2? Like, can you not tell it's like a special version? Like it's a collectible. It's not like, an audiophile pressing. It's something that like a big Zeppelin fan would be like, oh, this is really cool. It's a relic of like the band's history.
To display rather than probably even play. Right.
And I put $60 on it because it was selling for $75-$80 on Discogs, right? So it's like he looked at it, he was just like, it's missing the jacket. They want $60. And I'm like, oh, like the cognitive dissonance, it's like wild sometimes.
Yeah, where like, I don't know, I could like pretty quickly recognize walking in for the first time that like, it seems like you are making this effort to build community and regulars in your store. Like,
yeah,
I feel like I'm going to walk in there and I don't think that I would be super comfortable to like walk in and start trying to like bargain with you. But I just know from my 2 times of purchasing records in your store, like I bought that Warrant record last time I was there. And you're like, if you get that today, I'll knock a few dollars off or
Yeah.
something. Or like if someone buys a stack of records,
Yeah.
because like it does feel like maybe you have a little bit of that flexibility, especially because you're not selling a bunch of new records.
Correct.
That you can like make good deals for people, and like you can offer this punch card to people and do things like that to help build regulars in your store. And
I wish that I could be more like forthcoming about haggling.
Yeah.
I wish I could put up a sign that was like, if you don't think the price is fair or if you want to pay less, just ask. Cause like there are so many records that have been on the wall for like months or in the Holy Grail bin that if someone was like, oh, it's a little too expensive, like, man, if it was only like $10 less, I would get it. If you ask me, 90% of the time I'd be like, sure. Like, I just don't want to make that a precedent because then you get the worst people who are going to be like, this record's $5. Will you do $1? Or like, you know,
for sure.
They get a $10 record and be like, how's $3? And you're like,
Yeah.
that's not quite how this works.
Well, I think that's how it even. I was not coming into your store expecting to buy that Warrant record.
Yeah.
It's something that like is tied to nostalgia. It's not even like a record that I absolutely love, but it's a record that I remember listening to in my dad's truck growing up, and like he used to bang that record, and I was like, man, this would be really cool to have.
Yeah.
And I think I just out loud said to you, I was like, damn, I love to get this Warrant record, but I don't think I'm like ready to drop like $45 today. And you're like, I'll do it for 40 or whatever. Like, you know,
I don't know. For me, like it isn't about making the most money possible. Like I really do try to price things at what I think is a fair price, but at the the lowest amount I'm comfortable getting based on what I paid for it for the most part. So it's like having someone walk out with a record that they're excited about. Like if I see someone hemming and hawing over a record, I'll walk up to them and be like, I'll knock $10 off. Like for me, like the community of a record store, like I've called them cultural temples before. I feel like that's like a kind of like a intense way to describe it, but I really do think it is like one of the last bastions of like society where you can go somewhere and it feels like there's not just like this intangible robotic cold element and like screens everywhere and just like it's like a place where you just like. That's why we do our drops. Like, are you familiar with the drops we do? Like every month we pick like a genre and we pick a Saturday and we gather a bunch of used product from that genre and we put it all out, like 200 records. Like we're doing a hip hop drop in February. And we do that because everyone comes in and every time we notice, people just start shooting the shit and talking with each other.
Making friends. And
it's beautiful. And it like the sales are great on those days, but it's just more about like we're building a place where people can feel safe to come and share what they love.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm like always looking for in a record store experience. And also what I got out of your shop the first time I visited is that I am sometimes disappointed, even though it's kind of a stupid expectation on my part, that every time I walk into a record store and bring a few records to the register, that some sort of conversation is going to happen about the records that I'm purchasing.
Right.
It is a little naive on my part to think that like somebody wants to talk to every single person about, you know, the purchases that they're making. But I think it's also because I'm looking for recommendations.
Sure.
And so like, I'm kind of hoping that not that you're just going to be impressed with what I brought to the table, you know, but also I want you to be like, man, if you love this record, then if you don't know about this band, you should check this out. Like, because a lot of times I'll just buy that like on your recommendation. I remember when I bought I think you have or had a copy of it at the store, that Bizarre Tribe record.
Oh, like the mashup record?
Yeah. I remember looking through, I was buying a Tribe Called Quest record at there used to be a Jackpot Records on Burnside on the west side.
Oh, okay.
When I first moved here, I didn't even know about the one on Hawthorne.
Interesting.
I used to always go to the one near Powell's.
I didn't know that either. Yeah.
And I was getting a Tribe record in there and looking through some other hip hop, and dude in there was like, yo, if you like Tribe Called Quest, you should get this Bizarre. You should check this out. And I just bought it that day, and I was like, cool.
Yeah.
I'll buy it.
Yeah.
I love it. It's like such a cool collection, and it's like one of the better mashup things I think that happen on record like that. And I love that interaction. I love going to the staff picks in a shop, and like, And I love that your shop is small enough where I do feel like within even 30 minutes, I could look through almost everything that you have on the floor, you know, and like really see what's there, and that it's a small enough store where like you're sitting at the desk doing your thing and I could be like, oh fuck, Matt, you have this record? This is rad. Like, I remember like in your picks, you had the Third Eye Blind Out of the Vein, and I have that record.
Yeah.
And I was like, immediately, I was like, oh, I think I like this dude, Matt.
Well, here's the thing. I'm going back to your question about like my rules for like opening the record store, like my rubric or whatever you said. I was trying to break the stigma of the record store owner, because unfortunately there's a reason the stigma exists, right? There's a lot of record store owners who are not very conversational, who are kind of grumpy, sometimes pretentious. You feel like, oh, I'm like uncomfortable trying to start a dialogue. I'm worried I'm going to be judged for what I'm buying, what I'm into. And for me, I think whatever you're into, that's amazing. If you're passionate about music, good. Like, be passionate about music, and what you like is what you like. Like, people always ask me, like, what's your like guilty pleasure record you own? Like, what's like the record you're most embarrassed for? And I don't have an answer, because I'm not embarrassed about any of the records I own. Like, I don't think I could have an answer where I'm like, oh, I have this. Like, I'll stand any record in my collection. You know what I mean? So, like, for example, there was a girl who came in once, and she was very shy. Like, so myself and Goose is amazing at this. Goose is, for those who are listening, he's like my store manager, and he's been basically my right-hand man since close to opening. But he's extremely good at making someone feel welcome when they walk in. He'll like give them a rundown of the store and like how we do things. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask, stuff like that. So, I try to do that as well. And she was like very, very shy and didn't want to talk. And I was like, okay, let her do her thing. And then at the end of it, I was just like, what are you into? Like, what are you listening to? And she goes, really bashfully, she was like, I mean, I really like Taylor Swift. And I like Taylor Swift too. Like, I grew up with her music. I don't love all of it, but I really love some of it.
Yeah.
And I started telling her about how much I love Folklore and how The National is my favorite band, and Aaron Dessner from The National co-wrote it.
Yeah.
And she lit up. She was like mind blown that this guy who owns a record store, A, like Taylor Swift, but B, like wanted to talk to her about it.
Yeah.
And at that point, she got really into talking music, and she ended up leaving with a few records. Before we talked, she had nothing in her hands. Then we started talking about other things she was into. I found her some stuff. She was stoked. And it was an amazing experience for both of us. I was like, this is just like a beautiful moment where someone had an anticipation that the store was going to be judging her for what she loved.
Yeah.
But instead, she found someone that was able to meet her halfway.
You like remove the intimidation barrier by not just being like some dude that's into obscure jazz records. And like, that's the only thing that's going to like spark conversation out of you when you bring it to the register. Yeah.
It's very cool. Like, I want the store to also be a place where people can feel free to just come in and hang out and not buy anything. Like, people sometimes, I have friends and acquaintances who are like, oh, I was going to stop by, but like, I feel guilty not buying something. And I'm like, that's fine. Like, come say hi. Like, I want it to be a place, like, we have a couch, we're playing good music. Like, just come and kick it for a bit, relax. And we do have a lot of people who come in, and it's just like a place on, like, it's a haven for them, like on their weekly journey where they just come in and hang out. And I think that's great to have a third space, as they call it, like that.
Yeah, because like, you know, maybe sometimes they're going to bring a friend that hasn't been to the shop. Totally. Or like, even if they're buying things 7 out of the 10 times that they're coming through. Yeah. I would imagine that's a good thing for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What are your things that make you irritated about a record store when you walk into it? What are the don'ts?
The don'ts. I'm trying to remember the one, because I did a video on it, but it's been so long I don't remember exactly what I said. But I do think that, like, I've been to some stores where they have records just like sitting directly in a sunbeam, like in the store, and I'm like, those are all going to be warped like over time. Like, that's
like, are you, a band on tour?
No, really. It's just, I look at it and I'm like, how do you do this? How do you like miss that that huge aspect, which is like keep them out of direct sunlight. They're like gremlins, right? Like, it's like, that's one rule of records: don't put them in sunlight. I don't love when the bins are just so tight you can't dig through them.
Yes.
Like, and you have to like remove a chunk just to be able to dig, and then you have to like weasel them back in after. I don't know. For me, like sometimes our bins get tight, but I really do my best to like keep an eye on that and try to like pull out old stuff when that happens.
Yeah.
I don't like when record stores are so cramped and like dark that you can barely see the record you pull out. We have a lot of great lighting naturally and not.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I took all these things I didn't like and I tried to be like, okay, I'm going to do the opposite of that when I open my store.
Yeah. It's the cool thing of getting to do something like that.
Right.
You like truly do get to do it your way and like eliminate these things that like irritate you.
Yeah. And also stores that don't care about their product and they don't put sleeves on their nicer records. Like
the used records?
Yeah. Like a lot of stores will just have records in a bin that are just like all without sleeves and they're all just accruing shelf wear and ring wear and getting like little dings and like for us, like, yeah, it's a cost to buy sleeves to sleeve all the records that go out, but it also makes the product look nicer and makes people want to buy it.
Yeah. I railed against it for my own personal collection for a while because I thought like I didn't like the way the plastic sleeves looked.
Yeah.
But then I started selling a little bit on Discogs and then I was just like, this is dumb. Like I'm spending all this money on these records.
Yeah.
Like I should put them in the protective sleeves because they're going to make them last longer. And
correct.
Now it's like my goal is like now when I don't have a record in the sleeve, I'm just like, why am I out of sleeves? But it's also the way I know that I haven't put it in Discogs yet.
That's a good system.
If it doesn't have a sleeve, then I haven't put it in yet.
There's levels of collecting. I feel like you get into collecting and then like the more like you start to think about all the aspects of it over time. It's like, oh, I have to get good storage for these records so I can display them. Oh, I have to like get a nicer turntable. I have to start protecting them with sleeves. I have to get like cleaning fluid and clean them. Like as you get more entrenched in the hobby, like there's different layers of like intensity when it comes to like how you care and display your collection.
Because I've never had a hobby like this before.
No, yeah.
And
it's a lifestyle.
Similar to you, like I don't have a store, but I didn't start buying records thinking I was going to have a collection on Discogs that I would like flip some records here and there.
Sure. Yeah.
That would become a thing, but
yeah, it's interesting to see how everybody kind of like treats it differently, the way that they view their collection.
Yeah.
But it's all very personal, right?
Yeah. What makes a grail to you? What makes something a grail?
Well,
rather?
the definition that we have in the store is any record worth $60 or more. So all the records on our wall and in the Holy Grail bin are at least $60 of value.
Okay.
To me, a Holy Grail record is just a record that you wouldn't come across very often that might be kind of harder to find. If you were to like try to find it on Google, it's not going to be like available at stores. You could just buy it from like a label or something. Like it's something that you would stumble on and be like, whoa, like not everybody for everything, but like it's a record that whoever's looking for that would find it in a store and be like, that's crazy that they have this, or like this is something I've wanted that I can't seem to track down. So yeah, I would just consider it to be like an out of print, usually kind of rarer record or a collectible of some kind.
What's the most money you've ever dropped on one record?
Are we talking, can we count like a little box set, or are we talking yeah. Well, I have a whole video about this on my channel too. This is a crazy story, but I'm a huge Pearl Jam fan. And I ended up buying, I'm not going to tell the whole story because it's kind of long. If anyone cares, there is a whole video about it. But I ended up buying the Pearl Jam Live at Benaroya Hall box set, which is like the Holy Grail Pearl Jam record. Okay. They normally go for about $2,000. They only made 2,000 of them, and there's like such an enormous amount of Pearl Jam fans who are vinyl fans that that's like nothing. It's like an iconic show they did at Benaroya in Seattle where it was all acoustic. Okay. And it was in this nice box on like red vinyl and numbered. And I ended up buying it from Matt Cameron, the drummer's son, on Discogs, signed by the whole band. He put it up for $1,200. I thought it was like a joke. Amazing. I thought it was like a scam, but I didn't realize it was the son until we started talking. And I was like, wait, Ray Cameron? I was like, wait, no. And I Googled it, and it was like his son. I was like, and then I get the copy, and it's like Matt Cameron, one of his promo copies. It was crazy.
Funny, dude.
It was crazy.
But he's just like making money off his dad in that way because he doesn't give a shit about it.
His dad's like, you did what? Yeah. You sold it for how much?
That Pearl Jam 20, that's one of my favorite music documentaries.
Oh, for sure. That's another. Yeah, that was a gift. So I didn't spend on that. That was a generous gift from my friend.
Oh, that's right. I saw you have that. That's like just a rare thing that they give to the staff and crew and stuff. That's rad.
But yeah, I think $1,200 is the most. I think there's a handful of records. I would say there's probably 10 to 15 records that I've probably spent over 200 on, between like 2 and 400. But I usually am pretty good at finding deals or getting in on things before they're too crazy.
Okay, like that Tarzan record.
Like, yeah, you're betting on that one. You really think that's gonna shoot up? I've never seen someone so excited for the Tarzan record.
I just love Phil Collins.
Yeah, no knock on Phil Collins.
I was just pretty hyped that it was coming out, and I'm not going to like be someone that has 3 copies of that. I'm not going to like
just 2 copies.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. I have I've made too many mistakes that are over there. Those are all like my extra copies of things that I'm like, oh, I'll buy 3 copies of this. This'll go sometime. Why is this $20 on Amazon right now? To me. Okay,
done.
What's been the most difficult thing about making a record store like sustainable, or maybe even something you didn't foresee being difficult?
I feel very lucky in the sense that I have a social media presence before the store.
Yeah.
Because not all those people live in Portland by any means, but there were a handful who did. So I kind of had a built-in audience of people that were intrigued to check out the store from the get-go. I will say Instagram ads are like the best source of traffic for me. Like I run them constantly, and like people come in, they're like, oh, you popped up on my Instagram. Like it's a very recurring thing. But I will say the hardest thing about owning a store is getting people in the door.
Okay.
Because I would say our ratio of people that come in the door and buy something is extremely high compared to people that walk in with and walk out with nothing.
Yeah.
So it's not an issue of the store or the product. It's an issue of getting people in. And I think part of that's because of our location. You know, we're in a bit of a strange spot in North Portland. We're behind like this fence. And the fence is great because it protects us from people that want to do harm to the store.
And you have a parking lot, which is nice.
And we have a lot, which is very nice. But it also blocks it from like the amount of people over the years who are like, I live 2 minutes from here and I had no idea you existed. Because like they just drive past it like it's not there.
Yeah.
So getting the word out and getting people to actually come in the shop is the hardest part. Because like with this business, you know, whatever my metric is for like a good day of sales, if I have 3 customers that day, which is pretty low, but like if that happens, but if 2 of them spend a bunch of money, it doesn't matter if you have 30 customers who each buy like a $10 record. It's like there's no difference. Like it really, like 1 or 2 people can make the whole day worth it. So it's an interesting business where a lot of people will come in, and record collectors are pretty passionate, right? So it's like they'll buy a bunch, like a big stack of stuff sometimes. So it isn't as much about the foot traffic as some may think. A lot of time when you like get a business, like I do, lots of friends being like, make sure your space gets good foot traffic. And the whole time I was like, anywhere that gets good foot traffic in this town is going to be extremely expensive to rent. And I would rather just be a destination store and make people realize, oh, like this is a great store and I'm going to add it to my rotation after they discover it. And over time, I joke to people who say like, oh, I just discovered you. I'm like, oh yeah, we're the best kept secret. Like I joke about that because like people that come in, they usually are like, how did I not know this was here? And then they come back. But I think that's the hardest part is like getting the word out that we're here, even 2.5 years in. For
sure. And this city is like often pretty loyal to their neighborhoods. So like, it's not like you're not in walking neighborhoods. I'm sure you have like a lot of people that live in the neighborhood where your record store is, and you've become their neighborhood. Like, I walk to this spot.
I'll also say that North Portland is becoming kind of a mecca for, you know, it's like that's like a spot where people are going to get records. I mean, we have Vinyl Resting Place in St. John's, Specs, Mississippi, Music History, myself. Like, it's like a nice little hub. I know the Willamette Week did like a best of series they do every year, and we were nominated 2 years in a row for a top 5 record store in town, which is wild. We didn't win because every year it's Music Millennium and then Mississippi. Apparently, I heard for like the last like 19 years that's how it's been, which is funny. But I think this past year, 4 of the 5 people were all North Portland stores, and I was like, There's a lot of great stores in other parts
dude.
of town, but North Portland is not, no slouch.
Love Specs.
Love Specs. What a nice dude, too. What a smart, nice dude.
And just also another person who is like created community with the shows that are happening there regularly.
Absolutely.
Or just, I love at Specs that somebody will just be spinning vinyl in there. It's like, doesn't necessarily need to be a show, but maybe all day there's a few different people who are spinning records or playing tapes.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I think is always great.
Yeah.
Because I'm also like, I'm a sucker for also buying the now playing record in a store.
I mean, that's actually a funny aside I can share. So something I've noticed is that earlier I touched on how I have a different relationship with my own records, right?
Yeah.
So when I go home from the shop, I'm there usually 40 hours a week unless I have other things. I'm usually there a lot. I listen to 40 hours of records a week, right? So I go home and the last thing I want to do is listen to a record. So I'll bring in records from my collection that are in my to listen to, and I'll listen in the shop. And I'd say with about 95% accuracy, every time I play a record that's from my collection, whoever's in the store will be like, is that for sale? And I'm not trying to say, I have the best taste in music. It's just this weird cosmic thing where I have to be like, actually, no, this is like from my collection. But then I'll play a great record that I would love, or even that I own that's from the shop, and no one buys it. It's like a very weird thing where it's only when I play my stuff. It's like people know subconsciously like they can't have it. I don't know.
It's also this funny thing to me is sometimes where like a record sounds really cool in a record store. It's just like the environment
for sure
that like helps you hear it differently. And you're like, I don't think I ever cared about this album until right now.
Yeah.
Which I love.
I mean, records are very much a time and place thing. It's like, time of your life, place physically, proximity wise, place mentally. Like, I think that it's definitely something that, so it's very high fidelity to talk about it like that, but I do think like it's very autobiographical.
Yeah. What's your most sought after record right now?
That's a good question. I just did a video about my 7 grails. Every year I talk about 7 grails I want to get that year. And then at the next year I say I found X many from last year. And then here are my 7 for this year.
Yeah. I think I just watched the 2024 one.
Yeah.
That.
So I'm trying to think of like my number one want. But one that just pops into my mind from that video, because I'm having trouble remembering all of them now. There is a trip hop band called Morchiba.
Okay.
And their first handful of records are amazing. And have never had represses.
Yeah.
And I've been on the hunt forever. And their first record, I think it's called Who Can You Trust? Just beautiful. Like if you like Portishead or like Massive Attack, like if you don't know that record, it's so syrupy, so good. And I've never seen a copy ever. Like that's one of those records where if I saw it at a store for like $250, I'd probably buy it like sight unseen. But like you just don't see it. So it would be very cool to find any of those this year.
You still love the hunt?
I love the hunt. I do. I mean, like when I travel, I love traveling. I'm a big foodie too. I know that you are as well.
Yeah.
When I travel, it's literally just to go check out other record stores and eat delicious food. Like that's why I'm not a huge nature guy, which kind of puts me in a weird place in Portland. Like I love swimming in the river, but I'm not like a hiker camper. Yeah. So like when I travel, it's not so much like, oh, let's go check out this trail.
You've been to more record stores than you have trails.
1,000,000%. Yes. So yeah, I love the hunt.
Yeah.
And the hunt is different now because I'm looking for myself, but my want list is so small these days. My want list is modular in the sense that like I don't have a huge list of things I'm hunting for, but I'll get a record in and I'm like, oh, I've heard of this, and I'll listen to it and I'll be like, oh, this is amazing, and then I'll add it to my collection because of that. Like it's like a last minute addition to a want list, not like a hunting thing. But I do love the hunt. I think that's part of the fun of vinyl is like trying to find records in the wild.
I think it's also part of the fun of a store like yours where I think this is like mentioned in that first episode of what was that series?
No Skips. Yeah.
The first episode of No Skips, where you are talking about how you like to just go to a letter instead of like a band.
Yeah.
And that's how your whole shop is set up, which is really fun because like I just have no idea what to expect or what I'm going to find, because it's always like the day where there's just like no thought in my mind like that this particular record that I'm looking for is going to be in your shop, and then it is.
Right.
And then it's there.
It's it's the surprise and delight, right? That's
Yeah.
like the number one thing like marketing companies try to use, right? I don't know. I mean, I have a marketing background, so maybe there's some of that stuff that's in the back of my head, but also like I think there's a subconscious thing that's negative. Like stores will make a bunch of name cards for bands, and it'll just be, you know, every possible band of that genre, and it'll just be in the bin. But then if they sell out of records from that band, it's just empty. There's nothing between the cards. So it's like, it's almost like a disappointment if you're like, oh, like Pink Floyd, and you open it and there's nothing in there, and you're like, oh man, this store doesn't have any Pink Floyd. That sucks. But you wouldn't have been necessarily thinking about that if it was just P.
Yeah.
And instead, if there was a Pink Floyd, you'd be like, oh, Pink Floyd, Animals. Like, I've been looking for this.
Yeah.
So there is a kind of psychology behind it. I think it's negative to actually give someone an expectation when you don't have the thing that they're like, oh, great. Oh, shit.
Yeah. I did this thing with you that I've never done with anybody else.
Okay.
Which was fun. I felt like you were the right person to do it with, but something I've been wanting to do with people, and maybe I will like, maybe this will spark a new iteration of a thing I used to do called I Dig Records, which was like a separate podcast where my cousin and I would jump on the mics together and we would put each other on. Like we would each pick a record that neither of us were familiar with. Like one of us was hyped about, the other person didn't know much about, and we would kind of like do in-depth discussions about records, which was fun for a while, but then it just became like too much like homework. Like you have to have enough to say for like an hour about this record. But so when you got here, Matt, I asked you to just browse around and browse through the collection and pick out like 3 records from my collection that hit heavy for you.
Yeah.
So these are the 3 records you picked.
Yep.
Tell me about why you picked each of those records.
Yeah. So I'll hold this right here. Does that work?
Yeah, that's great.
So Better Oblivion Community Center. I think this record's such a sleeper pick because as big as Phoebe Bridgers is now, and she's colossal, so many people don't know this exists.
Dude, when that came out, I listened to that record like nonstop.
So here's my experience with this record. I grew up on Bright Eyes. Like my first real concert in like 2005 or 4 was Bright Eyes, and it was awesome. And I was like, this is crazy to be able to have this emotion in public with all these people. Because I'm Wide Awake It's Morning is still one of my favorite records, but like I was just so into it in high school. Like all my emo-ness, like it was perfect. So I discovered Phoebe, and it actually pains me that I discovered her so late because, I mean, it still was early. It was right after her first record came out, but like she was playing LA for years, and I lived there, and I could have probably seen her in like 30-person bars in like 2014, 15, and I just didn't know her. But I discovered her because she opened for the National, and she had an opening set, and I was like, this girl's incredible. And then she came out during the National set, and she did Sorrow with them, and which was really good. And I was like, wow, she's great. And then I listened to the whole album, and I was like, oh my God. And then I think I saw her solo on the opening album tour, and I was like, she's phenomenal. Like she blows my mind. And then I heard about this record coming out, and I was like, wait, she's collaborating with Connor from Bright Eyes. I was like, okay, I got to give this a listen. I had the pleasure of seeing them perform at the Terragram in LA, which is like a 300 cap venue. Yeah. And I remember at the end of it, they covered one of each other's songs, like a Bright Eyes song and a Phoebe Bridgers song. And like, just this album front to back is insanely good songwriting, lyricism, and every song is catchy. It's just 2 brilliant songwriters, like that fuse together in a way that makes each of them, it's like it pulls the best out of both of them. And I'm someone who historically feels like oftentimes when there's collaborations of 2 great artists, the collaboration is weak compared to the 2 of them. For example, I hate to say this, but like Kurt Weill and Courtney Barnett, love them individually. Their record together bores me to tears. And I'm like, they're so good on their own, but together it wasn't there for me. Yeah. This was the opposite. This is like, I would kill for another Better Oblivion Community Center record. You're
making me so hyped to listen to that. Like I haven't listened to it in a while. That is like that's a record that I would have a tough time letting go of. Yeah. You know, if I saw that one was worth quite a bit and I had an opportunity to sell it, I don't think that I would.
Yeah, I think Dylan Thomas was the first single maybe. Yeah. And I remember when that came out, I was like, this is awesome. And then when I put the album on, just like, didn't know what I was in for as the opening. It like feels like a Phoebe Bridgers song, but then you get Connor coming in and you're like, oh, I just got chills just thinking about it. Like
Beautiful.
the first time I heard this record. Like, yeah, unbelievably good.
These other two records that you picked are ones that are pretty near and dear to my heart and also have like shaped my informative years.
Yeah. Third Eye Blind, self-titled. I mean,
is that for me? That's maybe side A, song 1. That's one of the all-time greats.
Losing
like what a beautiful opening to a record.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about this record is that Third Eye Blind, like, obviously they have a ton of fans. They're huge, but a lot of people still view them as a one-hit wonder. Like, a lot of people think, oh, they wrote Semi-Charmed Life and Jumper and, like, how's it going to be? And then, like, that's all they've ever done. Like, a lot of people don't know that for power pop, like, 1999, they blew onto the scene with this record, and every single song is a 10 out of 10. There isn't one even remotely weak part of this record. I think Motorcycle Drive-By is one of my all-time favorite songs. Just like the energy when it blows up at the end, like
incredible.
Like vocally.
God of
and
Wine.
Then it comes God of Wine. Whew. Yeah, like
I think there's 6 singles on that record. That is
side 4, dude. The background Motorcycle Drive-By, God of Wine.
Yeah.
How to just get kicked in the heart down the stairs, roll down and land on your heart, like just beautiful.
Yeah, that was one of the albums we did on that I Dig record series. I think that there really is like 6 singles off that record. Obviously a different time in music where singles would come out after the record was out.
Yeah.
Which was wild because they were making music videos for every single single.
Yeah.
But yeah, that record front to back is undeniable.
Also, when I was in I want to say I actually don't remember what year it was. It was somewhere between 3rd grade and 6th grade. I forget what year, but I was in Northern California and I had a substitute teacher one day and it was the drummer's mom. And she was like, I don't know if you guys know, my son's in a band. and we're like, who is it? She was like, Third Eye Blind. And all of us were like, what? And it was like
incredible.
a crazy moment. But yes, this is a perfect record. This is in my top 25 records of all time without question.
Hell yeah.
And, you know, I love a lot of their stuff. Like I love Blue and Out of the Vein. I also love Ursa Major.
Yeah.
I think it's a great record.
Me too.
After that, they kind of lost me a little bit. But those 4, so many classics.
Yeah. Incredible.
Also just great live. Like really good live band.
Agreed.
I know he's kind of like a questionable guy. He's kind of like an ass, but
he doesn't seem to have the greatest reputation, but
he's a rock star. I don't know. Are we supposed to look at them as like the kindest people, or are they just like artists?
That's
like,
so funny because this other record you picked is Jimmy Eat World, and they toured together a few summers ago. And I went to that show.
How did I miss that?
And I remember, I think it was the drummer of Jimmy Eat World talked about what a fucking asshole Stephen Jenkins was.
I'm like not surprised.
Yeah, no, not at all.
But speaking of Jimmy Eat World, Bleed American,
this is a high school record for me.
You know what's funny is that I was obsessed with pop punk and emo in high school, and obviously I loved the big Jimmy Eat World singles, but I never dove into them in high school. I discovered this record when I was like 24, and I just remember being like blown away at how every single song, like Third Eye Blind self-titled, like could have been a single basically. Like Authority song, that's one of the catchiest like pop punk songs ever made, and that's a song that's like basically a B-side of this record. Like no one talks about that song.
That Cheating Gets It Faster jam.
Oh yeah, just like the vocal, the way that they like process the vocals, like some of like the glitchiness and some of like the, I don't know, like there's elements of this record that feel really dark.
Yeah.
And also elements that are just like overwhelmingly beautiful. Like Hear You Me, you know the story behind that song?
I don't know that I do. So
I'm going to butcher this. I'm going to try to do it succinctly, but there were these 2 people, I think they were brother and sister. Again, I might be messing up some of these details, but they were huge fans of the band in the early parts of their career, and they followed them around. They like became friendly with the band, and like they were just like such big fans. And I don't think it was a Jimmy Eat World show. I think the story goes it was a Weezer show. They were driving back from the show, and they got in a car accident, and they died. And Jimmy Eat World heard about it, and they wrote that song about them. And it's just like, when you know the backstory and you listen to the lyrics of that song, it just decimates you. It's just like, it's so brutal knowing that like a heart so big, God wouldn't let it live. Like, crazy. Knowing like the context of like their relationship to the band, and like I think the band would like sleep on their floor. I think there's a lyric about that in a song, like, you gave us a place to stay or something. I don't know. It's brutal. But outside of the sadness, I'm not getting sad talking about it. But yeah, I think like my favorite song on the record is probably a praise chorus. I just think like the Crimson and Clover interpolation at the end, like everything about it, just like, and like Sweetness is just one of the best songs to like get amped to in the history of music. Like, just like the first 30 seconds of that song is just pure adrenaline. Yeah.
And just the opening to the middle.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's such an iconic, like, little guitar riff that happens.
I missed the Bleed American anniversary tour for whatever it was, where they played it in full. And I'm praying that they do it again, because they just played it in full at When We Were Young and couldn't go. And I would love to see them play it front to back. I've only seen them one time. I saw them at When We Were Young the first year.
I have seen Jimmy Eat World a lot.
Yeah. They have like a framed signed record over there.
Oh, yeah, that was that from the Damages.
Yeah.
That was cool. I bought that at Music Millennium, and it just came like that.
Signed?
Yeah, it was like a special, like, it came with an additional sleeve that was signed.
Sick.
Which was great.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a great record.
Yeah, I'm like pretty much a fan of like front to back kind of all the whole discography from Jimmy Eat World is like kind of a band that like hasn't fallen off for me. And my favorite, I love going to the live shows now, because they do such a great job of curating a set list that encompasses like the entire catalog. And it's also like one of those bands where when they play the new shit, all the fans are singing along to that stuff as well.
Yeah.
Like, you can tell
there's like diehards
that they haven't like fallen off in that way, where people are just coming to the show to hear stuff off Bleed American.
Right. Although I am.
That's fine.
And here's the thing. I love Futures and Clarity, and like all their records are very good, and like I don't think there's one record I would say is like not good. There are some that I just like didn't get super into, but I don't know, like they're just a very consistent band that I also feel like doesn't get their due outside of their fandom. Like, a lot of people think they just wrote The Middle and Sweetness and that was their whole career, and it's like they actually wrote some anthems, like some true emo anthems.
Yeah. Jim Adkins just also seems like a pretty solid dude.
He does. He seems like a very like down to earth.
Like a dude that's not going to ruin your fandom if you get to like meet him.
Right. Yeah. He'll live up to be meeting your hero scenario.
Yeah.
Also a great front man. Just a very chill guy. So yeah, Bleed American is again one of my favorite records ever.
Hell yeah, dude.
And I hope I get to see it live in full one day.
I also hope you get to witness that.
Yeah.
Rad, dude. This has been super fun to just get to talk with you on the mics about records and
dude.
How the store has like come to be.
Totally. So do you want to start recording the podcast now, or?
Yeah, we should probably start. It's been a couple hours.
It's been a good talk, but let's get into it.
Yeah. Classic.
Yeah.
Do you want to close out by just talking about the records that like you have the label where you've like put out records, but
we've done like 19 releases.
You also have been recording the shows that have been taking place inside of the record store.
Yeah.
Tell me about those vinyl that exist.
Yeah. So we basically, thankfully, I'm very grateful for Goose. He was able to utilize his amazing engineering skills to every band that we have play at the shop, record it directly to the DAW, and then he mixes it and sends them back like a fully mixed recording of the live show, which is a really cool, unique thing that I know a lot of stores don't have the capability to do. So it feels like a very unique thing we can offer. And we did our first ever live at Too Many Records comp. All the profit from it is going to the Fred Hutch Cancer Center in Seattle to help with like cancer research, and we just wanted to do something to give back, but also like a cool thing for people who have seen the shows at the shop or just fans of the channel.
Yeah. To
be able to like, I took like 10 of my favorite performances and just kind of like threw them onto the record, and we pressed like only 100 copies. It's a pretty limited. We have a handful left at the shop. A lot of them have sold already, but it's a cool thing. It sounds great, and it's just like a nice little snapshot of the store and the fact that we are trying to like foster the music community out here. And I don't know, just like, it's a cool tangible thing to look at and be like, oh wow, like we've done these shows here, and here it is now as a record.
Very rad, dude.
Yeah.
Is there a particular song you can think of the top of your head that you would like for us to sail the episode out with?
Yeah, let's go. Well, Goose, like I said, is a good, really, really one of my best friends and intrinsic to the store's DNA at this point.
Yeah.
And he's called Goose because his band is called Goose Don't Be Frightened.
Yeah.
They're amazing. And at this point in the band, it was not. Now it's a full band. Now there's like a bunch of other people, and it's like 5 people. But at this point, it was just him and his now wife Laura, who's an amazing musician in her own right. And they performed at the shop just as a duo, and they did a song called Voltaire. That's I think going to be on their next record they're working on now. Cool. But they played an early version of it at the shop, and it's really beautiful. So that would be a good one to end on.
Rad. We'll play it out with Voltaire, and yeah, dude. Thanks for doing this. Ever since I started collecting records, and now that's like a thing that I like to do is just like go to any record store when I'm in a different city or just trying to hit all the ones in Portland. I have this dream of having a shop, so I'm stoked that
I didn't know that. That's great.
I'm stoked that you have one, and
the more the merrier.
Like I don't know if that's a thing that will ever happen for me.
Yeah,
but I'm stoked.
I believe in you.
I'm stoked that you have one, and yeah.
Just take it over when I open up another location across the country.
Okay, that sounds fun.
Great.
Also, shout out to my friend Lisa Hagen, who is the one that put me on to your record store. Like,
shout out Lisa.
When
Thank
I
you.
first got this shop, or when I first got this studio space, she brought me a Blackwater Holy Light record.
Oh, nice. She got it at my shop?
That she got from your shop, and she's
Sick.
like, "Oh, you got to meet this guy Matt. He's like recording at the shop, and I just like think that you guys would be like, you guys would be friends. So you should go stop by there." And then, yeah, I don't know. It's probably like a few months ago I finally made it in there, and
now we're friends.
Yeah, and now we're friends, and your shop is like relatively pretty close to my studio, which is really nice. So
yeah, no, thanks for having me. This was awesome. Anyone that wants to nerd out about music, I'm in. Mic or not, let's go.
Hell yeah. Well, Matt, we end every episode of the podcast with the guest saying the tagline for the show, which is "It's a program," and it means absolutely nothing. It's just the way that my grandfather says the word program. He always says program. So I just have everybody in the episode with their take of "It's a program." You can deliver it however you would like to.
It's a program.
He nailed it, everybody. That's Matt from Too Many Records here in Portland, Oregon. Check out the YouTube channel. You can hear Matt geek out on all kinds of records, his grails, his do's and don'ts of a record store. He can break down some myths for you about colored vinyl versus black vinyl. There's all kinds of shit to talk out or check out there. Also check out that episode of No Skips. Like I said, that's very cool and definitely like worth checking out. All the links for Matt will be in the episode notes. And if you live here in Portland, Oregon, please go check out Too Many Records. Get yourself a punch card. I'm trying to get mine decked out so I can cash it in. And that's the Jelly Jams, and we will catch you on the flip side, Portland, or wherever you are listening from. Cool, man. Thanks. We did it. I gotta pee.
Oh, if I can't operate machinery, then you should probably leave. Lose sight of the imagery in the forest lost in leaves. If we turned into dust before I say what I